So Kelly's birthday is coming up, and to celebrate, I decided to go a little bit of a different route this year.
Thank God.
Normally, I just reach out to his legions of fans to submit their heartfelt birthday wishes to my amazing co-host. But since Kelly did bring it upon himself to question the quality of the games that I bring to the Bog Panda universe, as far as us slowly starting to just kind of barely dip our toe into creating our own gaming content, not just talking about retro gaming, I decided that it was time to kind of step my game up, and I got some advice from the big man upstairs. You guys will see more about that later. But I got some advice from him, assembled a team very much MCU Avengers style, and got to putting together something that hopefully Kelly's going to be more impressed by. At the time that we're recording this, he has seen it, he has played it because I wanted him to be able to give you guys his his visceral, I imagine, reaction to all of this. So we are, of course, talking about the brand new Game Boy game Slapdash, starring none other than Kelly Tool himself. Kelly, I think you had picked up on some of my extremely subtle hints because that's how involved you are and that's how on top of things you are. So you were just kind of picking up those little breadcrumbs I was leaving behind. So I think you had an inkling that it was going towards a game. Is this what you thought, and what do you think of this?
Yeah, well, your deductive powers are only superseded by your incredibly thin skin. And just a comment or two around a basic program not being as complex as a reskinned game was all I said, and Mike's carried that on his back. It's just been eating at him. But so I had with this the subtlety of a bull elephant, you had kind of indicated maybe something was in the works and there were multiple people involved, and it would be a game, and it sure is, and it's a fun game, and it's Game Boy game, and we've not really settled on the game description and how much backstory is being provided to set the stage for the action part of the game. But I've advanced one earlier that was nebulous about what may have precipitated things. I'm sure Mike's version might be different, but we got some nice cover art for it, and it's a nice little game. I showed it to a couple folks too, and they've been very complimentary.
Very nice, very nice. So for anybody who is interested, the backstory of the game is that Kelly, we're going to throw out an alternate version where Kelly went to a show and did in fact slap Chuck Garrick. Now he's taking off, trying to make his getaway because he realizes what he's done. Trying to make his getaway, he's being pursued by security guards as well as security guard dogs that are chasing him through these back alleys, and the only thing he has to power him through is chugging beers as he goes. And it's an endless runner style game, so it's not about beating individual levels. It's trying to get the high score. That's what your goal is. So for every step that you take, you're getting a point. Every beer that you chug, you get 100 points, and you need to make it past the increasingly random and quick running dogs and the guards don't actually run, but they swing in front of themselves at you, so they have a little bit of a reach on there. So but you're running at a good speed, and I'm pretty proud of the game. So I kind of laid out what everything was going to be, got together a bunch of pictures of Kelly, not at all in a serial killer building a wall shrine kind of way. Got pictures of Kelly. There was actually multiple versions of his sprite, which I believe I sent to Kelly already, and if not, I'll send them again so that he can show you up on here. But we settled on hat and sunglasses. In many of the pictures of you, that's the combo that we see, just like the amazing artwork behind you, sir. But in many pictures of you, that's the combo that you have there. So I felt like it was more recognizable with the sunglasses on. Plus, with Game Boy games, you want to kind of keep the sprites small. I don't know if anybody watching this has ever played games like Wizards and Warriors for Game Boy, which looked great and had like large sprites for what the Game Boy was. I owned that game; it was fun, but the game moves kind of slow, and because you're sort of zoomed in on it when you're when you're making jumps for platforms and things like that, you're just kind of taking a leap of faith because there's just not enough room on the tiny screen to fit all the sprites and things on. So we didn't want to do that with this game. We wanted to stick to kind of that Mario size when he appeared on Game Boy, so small sprites. And the game moves pretty quickly. Again, it's a simple game. I'm not trying to oversell this as like this is the greatest thing you're ever going to see on Game Boy. It's a simple mini game. You're running from security guards and guard dogs and pounding beers. So pretty simple. You're running through this back alley. There's Bog Panda spray painted on the wall, which is something I thought of as a nice little touch. Reached out to a programmer. I have been messing around with GB Studio, which allows you to make real Game Boy games that can play on real hardware as well as on emulators. I've been messing around a little bit with that and I'm learning some stuff, but I was not far enough along to do something like this. I reached out to an actual programmer online. We got this together. I got to still kind of lay everything out, but she did the programming. I'm not going to take credit at all for that, but I laid everything out, designed everything the way it was going to be, and then when I really had to kind of start to intentionally reveal a lot more to Kelly because I wanted his permission before I did this, since we were going to be letting you guys play this game. I wanted to use Kelly's song "Bog On" from his upcoming solo EP as the music for the game. There is a version of it, one of our test versions that had like placeholder music, and I thought about maybe making original music for it or something like that, but it just made the most sense to use something that was Kelly's music. The original idea was Beer Lake from your old band, Toad Boner and the Bingo Brothers. It didn't really, in my opinion, it wouldn't have translated as well to the chiptune style though. Um, Bog On just sounds loud and also has like a little bit of space in there. So it's not going to sound too noisy when it gets converted to chiptune. Although Beer Lake would have made sense with the pounding beers. That's why that was originally. So when I switched it over, though, we kept the beer. It just seemed integral to your character development at that point that you're just downing pitchers of beer. And that was actually the pitchers was also the programmer's idea. Originally, I had said cans of beer, and I think her concern was with the smaller sprites that it wouldn't translate well. So she went with pitchers of beer, which I think actually looks a lot better. That was 100% the right decision.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, easy to discern what that is, right? I do think a can would have you would have had to make the can about the size of the character. I mean, even
Yeah,
though the pictures are pretty close to the size of the character, but still it works. And so
yeah, it
no,
just
but
works the way that it is. And she did an awesome job. I can't state that enough. There's even a little bit of parallax scrolling going on, not something the Game Boy natively did at that time. So, and again, this is a small mini game thing. I don't want to build it up too much where people think they're gonna play the greatest Game Boy game of all time. It is. But we'll let history say that. We're not gonna say that. We're too humble to say something like that. So, what were your thoughts on the gameplay, on hearing your song in there?
yeah, so I thought that was really cool to I was interested to see how Boggon would translate to the Game Boy platform. Pretty well, I think. I think that was pretty good. It kind of brings even though the solo EP is not out yet. I think like a second solo EP could be the Game Boy versions of all the songs, which would be kind of fun. But no, the gameplay is great. It's fun. It is an infinite runner, so it's a matter of persistence and continuing to keep focus to do well. Uh, I mean the beer placement creates because of high risk, high reward for the beer because you really want to grab as many of those as you can, but those will quite often put you into a bad place if you do it. So by and large, my strategy playing so far has been to say, hey, if it happens, it happens. I want to get it. My primary objective is to kind of steer clear of the troublemakers. Um, because I tried to be a little more beer focused in the game, and uh, didn't last nearly as long that way. So it was pretty good. But no, I thought it was cool. And so not only so even though it was fair criticism on the complexity of Mike's first if then else offering of a game. Um, he clearly exceeded uh, kind of any execution we've done so far, because this version, which will be available if you, we're going to have a link in the description where you can download it, the ROM, and as well as cover art. If you got a Super Console X, Raspberry Pi, any kind of emulation environment where you can drop Game Boy ROMs in and play them, it's there. We'll also do a little bit of research to say if you've got the file locally, how you might be able to jump onto a certain like online Game Boy emulator, just to got to make sure it works, because this is a very well coded system. So well coded, in fact, that current cartridge technology cannot accommodate it in some cases because it introduces some complexity. So give me a little backstory on that, Mike, in terms of
Yeah,
what
so
this game
the
has and
original
what.
plan, yeah, the original plan was to put this on a cartridge. There are, flash cartridges are a thing that's fairly available to people, and there are places that'll do that for you and make cartridges for, indie developers and homebrew people and all that kind of stuff. Not that I would ever put myself on that level. I have a long way to go before anything like that before I could be said in the same sentence as even smaller guys in this world. But the plan was always to put this on a cartridge, specifically a blue cartridge, because we all know that Kelly loves color cartridges, and blue is his favorite color cartridge. So that was always the plan. So we sent it out. I found this guy online and lots of great reviews of his stuff. I'd seen some of the cartridges. I was like, this is the path for it. And he had the exact color blue that I wanted. It was going to be the same color blue as the World Is Not Enough Nintendo 64 cartridge. That's what I was going for. I personally think that's probably the best color of a color cartridge that I've seen. Like I think that's the best use of it so far.
Yep.
Um, so that's what I was going for. He had the exact thing. So he said he knew in advance though. He's like, hey, send me the ROM. I'm gonna flash it and test on a couple of different models of Game Boy and make sure there's no issues. Smart. um, the issue I've learned now after talking to him and another place, the issue they typically run into with this stuff is because GB Studio is free and widely available. People are learning to use it, and they're making games that are too big to fit on actual Game Boy hardware. So they can't fit on the cartridges. They won't play back correctly on real hardware and things like that. And it's because even though GB Studio lets you make real Game Boy games, it's all digital, so you're not enclosed by the limitations of reality that the developers back in the day were of the actual system itself. So, they both told me we get games from people that are, multiple megs in size and stuff like that, stuff that just will not run on real hardware. That wasn't our problem. This game, while twice the size of Tetris, I'm proud to say, is not a particularly big game, if you can tell from the description. Not a huge game. Storage space is not the issue. It's actually because this wasn't made in GB Studio. This was programmed by scratch because my programmer kicked ass and did an awesome job. So this was all programmed by hand from the ground up. And in order to get some of the effects and the high score saving and all that stuff, the parallax scrolling and the high score saving, she did something that early cartridges did as a workaround before larger cartridges were available for the Game Boy, which was memory bank swapping. And those don't work on the PCBs on the later cartridges, which is what the newer flash cartridges use as well. So that type of game apparently doesn't work on there. So he showed me. He took pictures. In fact, I'll send a couple to Kelly. He took pictures of it not playing on real hardware, just so I could see what was going on. So I did reach out to the programmer. She knew of another place, games that she hadn't used herself, but games that she had worked on for different clients. They had physical cartridges made at this other place. So I reached out to them. Same situation. I sent it to them, and they were impressed because they sent it back and they were like, "Hey, this was programmed by scratch. This is not a GB Studio game." So they were both pretty impressed by the fact that it won't play.
Yep. So as much as we'd like to offer a cartridge option for you, we're just going to have to allow you to pull down a completely legal ROM.
Yeah, it is actually completely legal.
This legitimately
Yeah.
completely legal ROM. that you can load up in your emulation system, play it. And then I believe part of your grandmaster scheme also is that at some point we're going to sponsor a contest.
I think because this is a high score based kind of thing, we should offer the Panda Army the chance to kind of get in on the fun with us and have some sort of a contest to see who can be the best Kelly tool. And I think it would be fun to see real Kelly tool try and go up against the high scores of the other Kelly tools out there. Maybe some sort of prize will be involved in that. This could also be a great thing to use on guests and things like that. See if they can try their hand at being Kelly for a while. And of course, we need to look at the Slapaverse and where this is going to go in the future. So sequels are inevitable. I would love to see this ported or maybe a new version to some other hardware, maybe like NES. I think the ultimate goal for me would be to see it on like Nintendo 64 or Atari Jaguar. Those would be that's the dream to see it on that kind of hardware. But yeah, I want to make more games, and I think I learned a great deal by this by working alongside a real programmer who knows what they're doing, and then talking to people who manufacture cartridges and learning a lot more about the architecture of it and what you can and can't do. That by the time, hopefully, that I can do more of the programming myself using GB Studio, of course, but going through routes like that I can make things that are impressive and will play on real hardware and fit on cartridges and things like that.
Like to say I'm looking forward to that, but given what I think your focus is going to be, take your time.
I
Don't
think
rush.
that we've I'm not, I don't want to overstate this, but we may have discovered the new Mario, and that's Kelly Tool.
Yeah. Well, there'll be, their countermeasures will be taken. We'll be introducing another sprite in another game at some point to at least have options, much like behind me now. Is that perhaps there needs to be options. Uh, the counter to the Slapaverse might be the Bogaverse or the Bogus verse, where there's a character that says he's a doctor and he's not. Something like that. So we'll see. But no, I thought it was really cool. I thought the artwork you came up with it was really good as well. Sprite's cool. So we'll have, throughout the video, hopefully we've been able to show you a few of those things as well as some gameplay. And then in the description, you're going to be able to find the link to the ROM and the artwork so you can kind of load it up on the emulation platform of your choice. And, leave us some comments. Let us know how you're doing as far as scores go. Any contest, though, Mike will be requiring photos of the final score for us to sort that out, and we'll figure out kind of how prizes and all that stuff will work down the road. But it'll be pretty cool. And who knows? There may be updated versions of the ROM as a little bit of work goes on here. And if that's the case, you probably ought to subscribe to the Bog Panda YouTube channel because this will be the first place when you'll find out if there's any new releases of Slapdash, either upgrade to the current version or the much awaited Slapdash 2. And so
Presumably subtitled Electric Boogaloo.
Yep, 100%. So check it out. So we appreciate if you'd like and subscribe, hit that bell for notifications so you know. And a nice thing to have kind of on in the background while you're playing Slapdash, which you'll be playing for a long time because you're very talented and you'll be running and running and running and dodging things, is to find that playlist for Hard No, the world's shortest podcast. And while you're such a good player, one of those would not be enough to cover your gameplay. The good news is by starting up the playlist, you have hundreds of Hard No's that you can listen to, and with limited effort. So check out Hard No and maybe our merchandise as well.
Absolutely. And I think it's only a matter of time before Slapdash merchandise starts making its way out there. This is our video game on a real retro gaming platform.
True.
And it's a game I designed, it's a game Kelly composed the music for. So I mean this is a Bog Panda product on a real retro gaming platform.
Bog Panda.